Sit back, relax, and welcome to Reading Hours. Today's book is The Road by Cormac McCarthy. Please let us know in the comments from where you are watching, or if there is a book you want us to summarize in future. Cormac McCarthy's The Road, published in 2006, stands as a pillar of modern post-apocalyptic literature. It won the Pulitzer Prize for fiction in 2007 and captivated readers with its stark language, minimalist punctuation, and devastating emotional power. Unlike traditional dystopian novels that lean on political allegory or grand-scale survival narratives, The Road narrows its focus down to a brutally intimate relationship between a father and his young son navigating a world turned to ash. There are no zombies, no tyrannical governments, no elaborate world building, just two human beings struggling to stay alive, and perhaps more importantly, to stay good in a world where goodness has become nearly extinct. The setting is a burned, barren America, scorched by an unspecified catastrophe that has left the skies gray and the earth dead. Trees fall without warning. Ash blankets everything. Food is nearly gone. So are most people. And the ones who remain, many have turned to cannibalism, hunting others to survive. In this world, where even the sun no longer shines, McCarthy delivers a stripped-down, almost biblical story about love, survival, and what it means to carry the fire. A phrase the father uses to symbolize morality, hope, and human decency in an indecent world. Despite its grimness, The Road has touched countless readers with its powerful portrayal of paternal love. The novel is deeply moving without being sentimental, offering moments of profound tenderness in a world almost entirely devoid of beauty. McCarthy's prose, sparse, rhythmic, often fragmentary, mirrors the landscape it describes. There is no punctuation for speech, no chapters, and very little exposition. Yet somehow, through this barren form, the novel achieves an almost spiritual resonance. Some critics have questioned whether the book's bleakness crosses into nihilism. Others see it as one of the most hopeful stories of our time, precisely because it clings so tightly to the remnants of human connection. The tension between despair and grace is what makes The Road not just a compelling read, but an unforgettable experience. It's not a book about the end of the world. It's a book about what it means to keep walking through the end of the world with someone you love. When the story begins, the world is already gone. There's no clear explanation for what happened. No explosion, no virus, no war, just a collapsed world blanketed in ash and silence. From the opening lines, McCarthy plunges us into a landscape where the sun is blotted out, where everything is charred and dying, and where memory is the only flicker of color. A man wakes in the woods, reaching for his son sleeping beside him. The boy is perhaps 10, and we are not told his name. Neither are we told the man's. They remain anonymous throughout the novel, the man, the boy, as if names have no place in this stripped-down existence. The man stares at the boy, watches him breathe, and the intensity of that gaze tells us everything. The boy is not just his son, he is his reason, his anchor, his whole world. They are traveling south, always south, toward the coast, though neither knows what they'll find there. They carry all they own in a battered shopping cart with a blue plastic tarp tied over the top. Inside are blankets, scavenged food, and their one loaded pistol, with only 2 bullets remaining. Not for defense, but for mercy. If they are caught, the man knows he must make a choice. Their journey is marked by hunger, cold, and endless fear. At night, they sleep wrapped in blankets under the tarp, surrounded by the sound of wind or falling trees. The man dreams often, sometimes about his wife, who is no longer alive, and sometimes about a world that no longer exists. In one dream, he sees her in a house with bright windows, untouched by the catastrophe. The dreams are not comforting, they are dangerous. To remember too much is to weaken. He tells himself this: when one has nothing left, make ceremonies out of the air and breathe upon them. Early in their journey, the boy asks questions, always questions. Are we going to die? Are we still the good guys? Do we have to be afraid of people? The man answers honestly, but gently. He reassures the boy that they're carrying the fire, that they are different from the people who kill and eat others. And yet the truth hovers over everything they say. Every moment of silence is charged with unsaid things. There are people out there, yes, but most of them are bad. And being found could mean death or worse. They walk through abandoned towns, ransacked houses, burned forests. Everything has been picked over. Food is scarce. The man teaches the boy how to be invisible, how to hide, how to run. He teaches him how to kill himself if he must. These are not lessons anyone should have to teach a child, but they are necessary. Because survival now is not just about staying alive. It's about not becoming a monster. One morning, they pass a long dead body in a doorway, its face eaten away by time or worse. The boy looks, then turns away. He's seen such things before, but it never gets easier. Later, they stumble upon a farmhouse. The man tells the boy to wait outside as he checks it. Inside, he finds traces of violence, blood, overturned furniture, the smell of something rotting. Upstairs, he finds what's left of a family that once hoped for safety. He closes the door, walks back down, and takes the boy away without a word. Still, the boy's innocence is not entirely gone. He finds a toy in one of the houses, a flute made of plastic, and plays a quiet tune. For a moment, they are not in the ashes. For a moment, they are just a father and son. The man listens. It sounds like music, like something from a world before. As they travel, the weather worsens. Rain turns to sleet. Their shoes fall apart. The boy gets sick, coughing fits that shake his thin body, and the man worries it's the beginning of the end. He holds the boy at night, wraps him in his coat, whispers stories of courage and hope. He lies if he has to, because even in this world, the child still believes in goodness, in safety, in his father. The bond between them grows stronger even as the world around them grows more savage. One evening, they hear footsteps behind them, soft at first, then clearer. The man grabs the boy, hides him off the road, and waits. A group of people pass, armed, brutal-looking. They push a cart too, but theirs is not for food. The boy's eyes are wide. The man tells him to stay silent, stay still. They wait until the footsteps are gone, and then wait longer still, until only the wind moves. They move on again, always south, always hoping. Hoping not just for food or warmth, but for a world where people don't have to hide, where a child can sing without fear. They keep walking, shoes worn thin against the rough blacktop, soles patched with rags and plastic. The road ahead is endless, a ribbon of cracked asphalt disappearing into the mist and ash. Each step forward is a triumph, even when it feels like nothing is changing. The landscape stays the same gray, desolate, stripped bare. Trees lean like old bones. Cars are hollow husks scavenged long ago. There's no life, no color, no sound but the wind dragging ash across the pavement. And still, they walk. One day, the boy spots a house on a hill, a faded 2-story farmhouse with a collapsed roof and broken windows. The man hesitates. Every house is a gamble. It could hold food, it could hold danger, or nothing at all. He studies the path, the grass flattened just slightly, something indistinct in the air. Instinct sharpens. He leaves the boy hidden beneath a tree, whispering instructions to stay absolutely still unless he hears his voice. Inside, the house is quiet. Each floorboard groans like it remembers better days. The man moves through slowly, gun in hand, heart pounding. The kitchen has rusted cans, most of them empty or swollen with rot. Upstairs, the beds are still made, quilts frozen in time, untouched for years. A child's room holds a teddy bear with one eye, a drawing taped to the wall. He closes the door gently behind him, the weight of what once was pressing on his chest. There's nothing here, not even memories, just echoes. Outside, the boy waits with wide eyes, asking softly if it's safe. The man nods, and they rest for a while beneath the gnarled tree, drinking water in small sips and eating a few dry crackers from their dwindling stash. Hunger hums under every breath. The boy doesn't complain. He rarely does. But the man sees how his face has thinned, how his eyes always scan the horizon like a child forced to grow too old too soon. The next day, it rains. Cold, unforgiving rain that soaks their blankets and stiffens their clothes. They find shelter under an overpass, huddled beside a rusted truck. The boy shivers through the night, his cough worsening. The man lies beside him, trying to warm him with his own body. He listens to the rasp in the boy's lungs and feels fear curl inside him like a second heartbeat. The cough won't go away. And there's no medicine, no doctor, no miracle waiting at the end of this road. Just the long gray stretch and the fragile hope that they can last one more day. Sometimes they speak of the past. Not often, but enough. The boy asks about the world before, about the games people played, the food they ate, the sounds they heard. The man answers in quiet tones, offering glimpses of a world the boy never knew. A world with laughter, with birdsong, with sunlight. He doesn't embellish, he doesn't lie. But he offers these fragments like offerings, as if naming what was can somehow keep it alive. Then there are days when they encounter others. Rare, but never without risk. Once they see a man limping across a field, clothes in tatters, hair matted with filth. He doesn't see them. The boy wants to call out, but the man pulls him back. He explains gently, sometimes people will hurt you, even if they look like they need help. Not everyone is carrying the fire. The boy listens, but sadness clouds his face. He still believes in kindness, even when the world offers so little of it. There's another day, worse than the rest, when they find a truck by the roadside, its doors open. Inside are charred bones and the remnants of a fire. The boy stares before turning away, burying his face in the man's coat. They move quickly after that, not speaking for a long time. That night, the boy asks again, "Are we still the good guys?" The man holds him close and tells him yes. No matter what, yes, they're carrying the fire. That's what makes them different. The days blur together, a rhythm of walking, searching, hiding, surviving. Occasionally, they strike luck. They find a hidden cache in an abandoned store, cans of beans, dusty but sealed. They eat in silence, grateful, savoring each bite like it's a feast. The boy smiles, cheeks fuller for a moment. They sleep with full stomachs that night, the man with one hand on the pistol, the other around the boy's shoulder. As they approach a new town, the man grows cautious. Towns are dangerous. The buildings create shadows. The alleyways hold secrets. He sends the boy up a small rise to act as lookout while he scouts ahead. From the rooftop of a crumbling pharmacy, he surveys the area. No movement, no smoke, but a terrible stillness. In one of the buildings, he finds a group of bodies arranged in a basement, chained, a cellar of horrors. The smell is unbearable. He turns away, bile in his throat, fury in his veins. He gets out before the boy can ever know. They leave quickly, avoiding the main roads for a while. The boy senses his father's tension, and though he doesn't ask what happened, he clings a little tighter. That night, they don't light a fire. They eat cold food in the dark, and the man stays awake until morning, gun in hand, listening to every creak of the trees. Days later, as they travel through what was once a small farming town, the man notices the boy limping slightly. The boy insists he's fine, but when they stop, the man sees that a blister has split on the boy's heel. He cleans the wound with melted snow, wraps it with cloth torn from his own shirt, and holds the boy while he rests. In this world, even the smallest wound confessor can become the beginning of the end. He knows this, and so he watches carefully. There's no grand event, no sudden climax, just the daily quiet struggle, the choice to keep going when every bone says stop. The man grows thinner. His cough begins to mirror the boy's, but he tells himself that he cannot die. Not yet. Not until he knows the boy is safe. Not until they've reached whatever waits at the end of the road. Their bond deepens in these silent trials. The boy trusts without question, and the man, though weary and afraid, is unwavering. They speak less, but they feel more. Every glance, every touch of reassurance, every shared silence is filled with meaning. In this hollowed-out world, love becomes its own language. They press on, step by step, toward a coast neither has seen, carrying with them the weight of a broken world and the fragile ember of something still unbroken, something still worth saving. The days grow colder as they push farther south, though the man wonders if the seasons even matter anymore. The sun barely breaks through the thick gray sky, and when it does, it casts a pale, lifeless light over the dead earth. The boy's cough is worse now, deeper and more persistent. At night, he curls against the man, shivering under layers of blankets and tarp. The man whispers to him stories from long ago about the ocean, about warmth, about firelight and music, things the boy can barely imagine. The stories are half remembered and stitched together with hope, but they're enough. For now, they're enough. They find a barn off the road, its roof mostly intact. Inside, the hay is moldy and the rafters hang heavy with cobwebs, but it's shelter. They stay there for 2 nights, too tired to move. The man lays out their last few cans, counting them again, rationing in his mind. The boy sleeps a lot, his body giving in to fatigue. On the second morning, the man hears something outside, footsteps, faint but deliberate. He freezes, gun in hand. Then silence, long silence. He waits for hours, not daring to breathe too loud. When he finally steps outside, there's no one, only a pile of broken twigs where someone had stood, watching. They leave the barn within the hour. The road stretches ahead, indifferent. The man limps now from an old injury that's begun to throb in the cold. Every movement is effort. He leans heavier on their cart, which creaks beneath the weight of what little they have left: blankets, a flare gun, a few rusted cans, some water. The boy pushes too without being asked. Side by side, they trudge forward. They pass a burnt-out gas station, its windows shattered, pumps ripped from their sockets. Inside the convenience store, the shelves are bare, picked clean years ago. Still, the man searches. In the back room, he finds an unopened can of peaches behind a cabinet. A miracle. That night, under a broken billboard, they share it. The man gives the boy most of it, watching his eyes light up at the taste of sweetness. It's the first time in weeks that the boy smiles without worry shadowing his face. The man smiles too, faint and fleeting, but real. In a nearby culvert, they discover a locked cellar door, almost hidden beneath ivy and snow. The man examines it carefully, checking for signs of recent use. There are none. He breaks the lock with a rock and eases the door open. Inside, it's dark and musty, but as his eyes adjust, he sees what could only be called a treasure trove: canned goods, clean water, blankets, and even soap. Someone had stockpiled, prepared for the end. The boy steps in, stunned into silence. For the first time in a long while, they feel safe. They stay in the cellar for days, perhaps even a week. The boy rests, eats, and gains some color in his cheeks. The man, too, allows himself to relax, just slightly. He shaves with an old razor and warms water to wash the boy's hair. These are luxuries. Temporary but precious. They light candles at night and speak softly, as if not to disturb the ghosts that might still linger above them. The boy wants to stay. He says it more than once. "We don't have to go, do we?" The man explains gently that they cannot linger, not forever. The world above won't let them. This place, too, could be found. They must keep moving. South. Always south. Before they leave, the man packs what they can carry: food, water, a new tarp, and a few supplies. He feels stronger, the pain in his leg lessened, the fever receding. They walk again, and though the ash still falls and the air still burns with the ghost of fire, there's a rhythm to their movement now. They are steady, quiet, determined. Along the way, they encounter a woman. At first, she appears to be nothing but a shadow moving among the trees. The man sees her from a distance, crouched near a creek, scooping water with her hands. He holds the boy close and observes. She's alone. Her clothes are torn and her hair is tangled, but she doesn't seem dangerous. Against his better judgment, he calls out. She startles, rising like a frightened animal. He raises his empty hand to show he means no harm. She doesn't respond. Then, slowly, she disappears into the trees, never once turning back. The boy asks why she left, why she wouldn't speak. The man doesn't answer right away. Later, by the fire, he says quietly, "Some people have been alone too long. They forget how to be with others." The boy is quiet for a long time after that. The landscape begins to change as they move further south. The snow lessens. The trees grow less skeletal, though still lifeless. The boy asks about birds, where they went, if they'll ever come back. The man tells him he doesn't know. But he remembers their songs, and he whistles one softly, broken and incomplete. The boy tries to mimic it. They laugh a little. They pass through the ruins of a once busy city. Skyscrapers loom like ghosts, their windows shattered, their bones exposed. Cars sit abandoned on highways, their interiors filled with dust and silence. The boy is uneasy. The man is alert. Cities are dangerous, too many hiding places. They avoid the main roads, navigating alleyways and tunnels. In a parking garage, they find a dead man clutching a photograph. The boy looks at it, the man and a woman, smiling beneath a bright blue sky. The boy asks what they were doing. "Just living," the man says. Later, they stop to rest in an old train car, its walls covered in graffiti. The boy traces the letters with his finger, though he can't read them. The man teaches him a few. They laugh when the boy makes up silly words. For a brief moment, the air feels lighter, but the man's cough returns. At first it's dry, then deeper, harsher. He tries to hide it, but the boy hears. He always hears. That night, as the fire flickers low, the boy asks if he's okay. The man says yes. The boy doesn't believe him. Neither of them says anything else. And still, they keep moving. Not because they believe something better waits, but because to stop would mean giving up. And they are not the kind who give up. Not yet. Not ever. Because they carry the fire, and the fire must be kept alive. The road rises gently ahead, its cracked surface like old skin peeling beneath the weight of time. They follow it through hills wrapped in gray mist, the world around them hushed, as though nature itself is holding its breath. Each step is cautious. Every turn in the road is a new question. The father's eyes never stop scanning up hills, into trees, across bridges long abandoned. Even as they move forward, his thoughts are always behind, checking if they're being followed, if some forgotten sound has returned to haunt them. A storm breaks one night without warning. The wind howls like a chorus of mourning ghosts, and rain pours so hard it stings their faces. The tarp is barely enough to shield them. They huddle beneath a broken overpass, soaked and shaking as water gathers in the cracks of the concrete. The boy clutches the man's hand, eyes wide, his face pale in the flickering lightning. The man whispers to him not to be afraid. He tells him it's only rain, just weather, something natural in a world that's become unnatural. But inside, he knows even the rain feels different now, cold in a way that reaches into the bones, ruthless, like everything else that remains. When the storm passes, the world is left darker than before. The ash is soaked into sludge beneath their boots. They push the cart slowly, wheels struggling in the mud. The boy coughs and sniffles, but he doesn't complain. He watches the man with eyes that are older than they should be. The man watches him back, searching constantly for signs of strength or sickness, for any hint that the boy's small frame is failing under this weight of survival. They find a burned-out farmhouse on the edge of a field of blackened corn stalks. The roof has caved in, but part of the porch remains. It's something. They sit there for a while, letting the sun, dim as it is, touch their faces. The boy finds a rusted horseshoe and turns it over in his hands. "What's this for?" he asks. The man explains about luck and old beliefs, about people who used to hang them above doors to keep evil away. The boy thinks for a moment, then quietly sets it beside their cart. "Maybe it'll work for us too," he says. Inside the house, the floorboards creak and threaten to give way. Broken glass crunches underfoot. The man searches the pantry and finds nothing but dust and rodent droppings. Upstairs, they find a child's bedroom, the wallpaper peeling in long curls like forgotten ribbons. A doll lays face down on the floor, its fabric rotted, its eyes long since fallen out. The boy stares at it, then quietly closes the door without entering. Some memories are better left untouched. They sleep in the front room that night, fireless. The man presses his ear to the boards, listening to the wind moan through the hollow house. In the dark, the boy whispers, "Do you think there are still good people?" The man thinks of his answer for a long time. "I think we're still here," he finally says. The boy doesn't speak again, but he holds the man's hand tighter. They leave at dawn. The sky is a dull bruise of color, no sunrise, just a shift in shade. The road takes them through wooded valleys where the trees stand like skeletal sentinels. Along a narrow path, they find a dog. Thin, mangy, skittish. It watches them from a distance, its ribs pressing sharply through its skin. The boy is immediately drawn to it, reaching out, whispering softly. But the dog backs away, tail low, before turning and disappearing into the underbrush. boy watches it go, his expression a mixture of sadness and hope. "He was scared," he says. The man nods. "Everything that's alive is scared." As they walk on, the man notices more signs, fresh tracks in the mud, broken branches, the faint smell of smoke. Others have passed through recently, possibly armed, possibly desperate. The man becomes more cautious, more silent. He teaches the boy how to move quietly, how to breathe through his nose, how to listen. At night, they sleep in shifts. The man never fully rests, and the boy, sensing the tension, speaks less and less. They communicate mostly through looks now, nods, gestures, small signals they've developed over time. Language is a luxury, and noise a danger. In an abandoned hardware store, the man finds a small tin of matches hidden beneath a collapsed shelf. They're damp but salvageable. He lights one carefully, watching the flame dance. The boy watches too, transfixed. Fire is life. Fire is the line between surviving and vanishing. They huddle around the small warmth as if it were sacred. They pass the skeletons of trucks lined up along the road like a funeral procession. The man peers inside each one, searching for anything useful: batteries, food wrappers, even clothing. In one, he finds a blood-stained blanket and moves on quickly. The boy doesn't ask about it. He knows enough not to. Further down the road, they come across a tunnel carved through the mountainside. The inside is pitch black, the far end barely visible. The man hesitates. The tunnel could be shelter, or it could be a trap. After weighing it in silence, he decides they'll go around. It takes an extra day of climbing through brush and rubble, but the man sleeps easier that night. The boy, though tired, never questions the choice. They find a stream with running water, not much, but clean enough to drink. The boy cups it in his hands and laughs. The man hasn't heard that sound in days. It fills him with a strange ache, a mixture of love and fear so powerful it threatens to crack his ribs. He watches the boy's face in the reflection and silently begs whatever gods remain to let this moment last. The road soon leads them into more dangerous territory. They come across signs of struggle: blood on bark, a boot half buried in the dirt, drag marks disappearing into the woods. The man puts his hand on the boy's shoulder and steers him away. He doesn't explain. He doesn't have to. The boy's silence is enough to show he understands. They are walking through the remnants of someone else's nightmare. They cannot afford to stop and look. As they continue their descent southward, the man's cough returns, more frequent now. He tries to hide it, turning his face and burying the sound in his sleeve. But the boy hears, always. He says nothing, but his small hand is there more often now, steadying the man when he stumbles, watching his face with concern too heavy for someone his age. The man resents that quietly. Not the care, but the burden. He wants to be strong for the boy, always. He knows the day will come when he no longer can, but they keep moving, because the road doesn't end, because something might still wait beyond the horizon. Because in a world where everything has fallen to ruin, the only truth they know is each other. The landscape changes as they descend from the hills. The trees thin out, replaced by stretches of skeletal plains where once there might have been wheat or grass. Now, only stalks of dead vegetation remain, brittle and gray, bending under the weight of ash that never truly settles. The wind is constant here, more a whisper than a howl, pushing dust across their path like waves on a dead sea. The man wraps a torn piece of cloth around the boy's face, shielding him from the bitter taste of decay that clings to the air. His own throat burns, the cough deeper now. sometimes racking his body so fiercely that he must stop to catch his breath. They walk under an endless sky, colorless and cold. In the distance, the ruins of a barn rise out of the haze. The man approaches it carefully, crouched low, the revolver steady in his grip. Inside, the structure is hollowed out, its beams split and burned. Beneath a mound of scorched hay, they discover the remains of animals long dead, long picked over. The boy turns his face away, but he doesn't cry. He hasn't cried in weeks. He has learned to look and then to look away. It's a skill in this world. They rest there briefly, their backs against the splintered walls. The man pulls from his pocket a small piece of dried apple, carefully rationed. He breaks it in half and offers the larger piece to the boy. The boy shakes his head. "You need it more," he says. The man insists, softly but firmly. This ritual is familiar now, an act of love wrapped in survival, a gesture that says more than words ever could. They eat in silence, chewing slowly, savoring even the smallest taste of sweetness. As they leave the barn, the boy asks his father if they'll ever see another child. The man doesn't answer right away. He wants to say yes. He wants to lie beautifully. But he's never lied to the boy, not once, and he won't begin now. "I don't know," he finally says. "Maybe." The boy seems to accept this. He looks out at the empty fields and keeps walking, his small feet leaving temporary prints that vanish with the shifting ash. They follow the road as it dips into a valley. The remnants of an old town emerge from the haze, broken signs, crumbling buildings, the scattered debris of lives interrupted mid-sentence. The man stops at a gas station, its windows blown out, the pump long dry. Inside, there's nothing but twisted metal and glass. But behind the counter, hidden beneath a fallen shelf, he finds a can of soda. Dent-covered and warm, but intact. He opens it carefully and offers it to the boy, who sips it with wide eyes, the fizz making him cough and smile. For a moment, it feels like they've stepped back in time, to a day when things like soda and laughter were still normal. The smile fades quickly, though. Down the road, they hear something, footsteps, perhaps. The unmistakable rattle of a cart like their own. The man pulls the boy behind a collapsed wall, their bodies pressed close, breath shallow. Through a crack in the bricks, they watch a group of 3 people pass, 2 men and a woman, all armed, gaunt, and grim. One of the men carries a machete. The woman wears a backpack stained with something dark. They don't speak. Their faces are blank, hardened by whatever they've had to do to stay alive. Once they've gone, the man waits for a long while before moving. His hand never leaves the pistol. The boy's hand never leaves his. They detour off the main road for the next few miles, cutting through brush and overgrown lots. Every sound becomes amplified, every silence more dangerous. They make no fire that night. The cold seeps into their bones, and the man wraps himself around the boy, using his own body as a shield. He watches the sky until his eyes blur. He wonders, not for the first time, how much longer they can go on like this. Morning comes slow. They eat the last of the crackers they found 2 towns ago. The man keeps a map, though it's barely legible now. Creases and water damage have worn it down to a patchwork of smudges. Still, he uses it to guess where they might be, where the coast might lie. South is the only certainty. South is the dream, the hope of warmth, of maybe something green. He doesn't know if anything will be there when they arrive, but movement gives them purpose. To stop is to surrender. Later that day, they find a small creek, its waters thin but moving. The boy kneels to drink, cupping the water in his palms like a prayer. The man follows, watching the boy's reflection ripple in the surface. His face has grown thinner, his eyes darker, but the spark is still there, that flicker of kindness, of belief. The man wonders if it's because of the stories he tells, or simply the boy's nature. He wants to believe it's both. Further down the road, they encounter a wrecked vehicle, flipped on its side in a shallow ditch. The interior has been gutted, but beneath the floor mat, the man finds a small box of shotgun shells, useless to them, but it makes him alert. Where there's ammunition, there are weapons. And where there are weapons, there are people, dangerous ones. He pockets the shells and moves on, listening harder now, scanning every ridge and tree line. They pass a rusted playground, the swings swaying slightly in the breeze. The boy stops and looks at them, his expression unreadable. The man waits. Eventually, the boy says, "Do you think kids used to laugh here?" The man nods. "I know they did." The boy watches the empty swing twist once, then moves on. Some things are too painful to remember for long. That night, the man dreams of his wife. In the dream, she stands at the edge of a lake, her dress caught in the wind, her hair shining gold in the sunlight. She says nothing. She just looks at him. When he wakes, there's no lake, no sun, no wife, only ash. Only the boy's steady breathing beside him. The man closes his eyes and listens to that rhythm, the fragile proof that life still exists, that the fire still burns. They keep going, because there's nothing else to do. Because hope, however fragile, is stitched into the soles of their feet with every step forward. Because even in a world so lost, they have each other, and that has to be enough. The wind rose with a mournful sigh the next morning, brushing past them like the breath of something ancient. The man woke first, as he always did, his eyes opening to the pale ash drifting through the gray air like falling snow. He lay still for a moment, listening to the boys even breathing beside him, that small sound anchoring him more firmly than any hope of safety ever could. Every day began this way, cold, uncertain, but undeniably forward. He reached over and gently touched the boy's shoulder. The boy stirred, blinked sleep from his eyes, and looked at his father without fear, just quiet understanding. They packed what little they had into the shopping cart. Blankets folded, cans counted, tarps checked for holes. The man tested the revolver again, then wrapped it in the ragged cloth he kept in his coat. With a glance down the road, a narrow, broken line between dead woods and dark sky, they began to move once more, one slow step after another. The boy walked close, always close, and the man reached down sometimes just to touch his head, to remind himself that he was still there. They passed the remains of a train, its rusting cars twisted like bones along the tracks. Nature hadn't reclaimed it. Nothing had. It was too lifeless for nature to care. The windows had long been shattered, the interior gutted. As they explored the wreck, the man kept a firm grip on the boy's hand, scanning the shadows within. He found an old conductor's cap and placed it briefly on the boy's head, drawing a flicker of a smile. But even moments of play had a haunted edge. Everything they touched was a relic, a piece of a world that no longer existed. Further down, they found a house, large, pale stone, the kind that once held memories of families and warmth. The windows were black holes, staring like hollow eyes. The man stopped at the gate and scanned the ground for signs of recent tracks. The grass was dead, the earth undisturbed. Still, he approached carefully, the revolver ready. Inside, the house smelled of mildew and rot. They moved room by room. Each one was still, untouched by wind or life. Furniture stood as it had been left, blanketed in dust and silence. In the kitchen, they found a single, unopened can of beans. A miracle. The boy gasped when the man held it up. That night, they heated it over a small fire lit deep inside the stone fireplace, the flames barely visible from outside. The warmth of the food was a comfort beyond the hunger it soothed. As they ate, the boy asked if the people who had lived there were good. The man hesitated, then said, "Maybe they were." Once, the boy nodded solemnly and wiped his mouth with the back of his hand. "We're still good," he said. The man looked at him, something catching in his throat. "Yes, we are." The next day, the sky threatened snow. Not clean snow, there was no such thing anymore, but heavier ash, colder, enough to soak into their shoes and clothes. They wrapped themselves tighter and pushed on. Along the road, they encountered more wreckage, a pickup truck overturned, its contents long looted. Scattered toys, broken picture frames, the rusted skeleton of a bicycle. The man felt the weight of every item. They weren't just objects, they were echoes of lives undone, dreams left halfway through. They took shelter beneath a crumbling overpass when the wind grew too sharp to continue. There, the boy pulled something from the ground, an old, battered book with its pages curled and faded. He opened it, flipping through without understanding the words, but fascinated by the act of holding a book, something from the time before. The man watched him, silently grieving and marveling all at once. He wondered what stories the boy would carry into adulthood if he ever made it that far. Would he remember these days? Would they shape him or break him? They stayed under the bridge through the night. The fire burned low, and the man rationed the last of their clean water. The boy fell asleep against him, his thin frame shivering even beneath the layers of blankets. The man didn't sleep. He stared at the darkness, listening for footsteps or whispers, anything that would signal danger. In this world, silence could be mercy or a warning. The road beyond the overpass led through a wooded stretch where trees stood like pillars of ash. There were no birds, no movement, only the creak of branches in the wind. As they made their way through, the boy stumbled and scraped his knee. He didn't cry, but the man stopped and knelt beside him, cleaning the wound as best he could with a rag dipped in melted snow. "You're okay," he murmured, tying a strip of cloth around the cut. "You're okay." The boy nodded, biting his lip but trying to be brave. Later that day, they reached a gas station at the edge of a small town. Its walls were charred, but the storage room in the back was still intact. Inside, behind shelves coated in dust, the man found a sealed bottle of water and a packet of instant noodles. He grinned, more a grimace than a smile, but the boy's face lit up. They boiled the noodles in a pot scavenged from the floor, the scent rising like incense. It was the first hot meal in days. The boy closed his eyes as he ate, savoring the warmth, the rare fullness in his belly. Afterward, the man sat back, watching the boy draw in the ash with a stick. He traced shapes, stars maybe, or animals he only remembered from books. The man wondered what kind of world this boy would build in his mind, what myths he would create from the fragments left behind. Would the stars mean something else to him? Would trees be legends? As dusk fell, they made a bed in the storage room, barricading the door with metal shelves. The man held the revolver close, his arm around the boy. In the darkness, the boy whispered, "Do you think there are still good people out there?" The man didn't answer right away. He thought of the people they'd seen, the ones who hunted and ate their own. But he also thought of the boy, this gentle, unbroken soul who carried fire in a world of ash. "Yes," he said finally, "because we're out here." The next morning came without ceremony, the same dull gray washing over the land like a shroud. There was no sunrise, just a slow lifting of shadow into a slightly lighter shade of despair. The man stirred before the boy, as always, and sat up quietly. The metal shelves they had used to barricade the storage room door were still in place. No footsteps in the dust. No sounds in the air. For now, they were safe. He let the boy sleep a while longer, watching the gentle rise and fall of his chest. The boy's dreams seemed peaceful, something rare, maybe sacred. When they left the gas station, the man moved slower than usual. He could feel the weariness settling deeper into his bones, the kind that food and rest couldn't undo. Still, there was no time to linger. South was always the direction, toward the coast, toward something undefined but vital. He pulled the cart behind him, the wheels squealing faintly, cutting through the stillness like a whisper too loud. As they walked the outskirts of the small town, the boy spotted a rusted bicycle lying in a ditch. The tires had rotted away, and the chain hung limp like a dead snake. Yet he crouched beside it, running his fingers over the handlebars. "Did you have one of these?" he asked. The man nodded. "A red one," he said. "Used to ride it to school." The boy smiled faintly, his fingers still on the frame. "I think I'd like that." The man swallowed, feeling the ache of memory creep up. "You would have been fast," he said softly. The town grew quiet behind them, replaced again by long stretches of road and forest. The trees stood like ghosts, tall and skeletal, their branches stripped bare. A flock of black crows erupted suddenly from the treetops and vanished into the gray sky. The boy clutched his father's coat. "What were they?" he asked. "Birds," the man said. "Not many left now." The boy tilted his head upward, squinting into the ash-flecked sky. "Do you think they're going somewhere safe?" The man didn't answer. There were no safe places, not really. By midday, their legs ached and their stomachs groaned. They stopped at a creek, its surface half frozen, the water beneath sluggish and dark. The man broke the ice with a rock and filled a bottle, watching as sediment swirled within. It wasn't clean, but it would do. He handed it to the boy and reminded him to sip slowly. After they drank, they sat quietly on a fallen log. The boy leaned against his father, his fingers playing with a button on the man's coat. "Do you think we'll make it?" he asked. The man looked ahead to where the road curved out of sight. "We have to," he said, "because we're carrying the fire." The boy repeated the words softly to himself, as if trying to make them part of him. Later that day, they came upon an old train tunnel. Its mouth was black, looming like the entrance to the underworld. The man stopped, eyeing it warily. The tunnel could offer shelter, or it could hide something worse than the cold. He debated, but the sky had begun to spit frozen rain. Shelter was necessary. He pulled out the flashlight and gripped the revolver tight. "Stay behind me," he said. The beam of the flashlight trembled as it illuminated the curved stone walls. The air was damp, heavy with mildew and old smoke. Every sound echoed: the creak of the cart, the crunch of gravel under their feet, the boy's small breath. Halfway through, they came upon a rusted cot and the remains of a fire. Someone had been here. Not recently, but long enough to leave behind the ghost of their survival. The boy knelt by the fire pit, poking at the blackened wood. "Do you think they made it out?" he whispered. The man watched him closely. "I hope so." They stayed there for the night, pressed close under their tarp, the fireless dark wrapping them in a kind of uneasy safety. The man didn't sleep. He kept the flashlight on low, listening for sounds in the tunnel beyond. But nothing came, only the soft drip of water and the boy's dreams shifting beside him. When they emerged the next morning, the rain had stopped. The world was slick and silent. As they walked, they saw signs of others again, footprints in the mud, a torn scarf caught in a tree branch, a cigarette but still dry beneath a rock. The man tightened his grip on the cart. They moved faster, staying off the road, skirting through the woods. The boy didn't ask questions. He understood the code of silence now. They reached a farmhouse just before sunset. It stood crooked, its windows shattered and porch sagging. The barn beside it had collapsed inward like a broken rib cage. Still, they approached with caution. The man went in first, flashlight sweeping over upturned furniture and broken glass. In a back room, they found canned goods, 6 of them, dented but sealed. A treasure hoard. The boy grinned and hugged his father's arm. That night they feasted. Not lavishly, but with gratitude. Baked beans and peaches. The boy laughed for the first time in days. The man let the sound settle in his chest, warm and strange. In the corner of the same room, the boy found an old globe, dusty, tilted on its axis. He spun it slowly, watching the continents blur into streaks of color. "Where do you think we are?" he asked. The man pointed to a spot along the southeast. "Somewhere here." The boy placed a finger nearby. "And the coast?" The man nodded. "Still a ways off." The boy turned the globe again, this time more gently. "It's hard to believe it ever looked like this," he said. The man leaned back, his eyes tired. "It didn't look like that for long," he said. "Not after." They spent 2 nights in the farmhouse, rationing food, patching holes in their blankets with strips of curtain. The man let the boy rest more, knowing how few such places remained. But rest always came with its own dangers, complacency, false hope. On the 3rd morning, they moved on, south again. The road opened before them, gray and endless. They passed a dog, thin, almost a shadow, watching them from the edge of the trees. The boy stopped, eyes wide. The dog didn't growl or run. It just stood there, its ribs showing beneath matted fur. The man held the boy back, watching. Eventually, the dog turned and vanished into the woods. The boy's shoulders drooped. "I wish we could have helped him," he said. The man nodded. "I know." But they had nothing to give, not to the world, not even to a starving creature that hadn't yet turned savage. That evening, as they camped beneath a canopy of dead trees, the boy asked a question he hadn't asked in a long time. "Do you think Mom would have come with us?" The man turned slowly, surprised. He looked at the boy, then at the fire they had managed to coax to life. "No," he said gently. "She couldn't." The boy nodded, not asking why. He already knew. The man watched the flames for a long time after the boy fell asleep. The road stretched on, uncertain and brutal, but he'd keep walking it, because the boy still carried the light, because he still believed in the fire. Morning came without light, just a dull, sullen haze that hung in the sky like smoke, refusing to rise. The man woke with a deep ache in his chest, a familiar tightness that made it hard to draw a full breath. He sat up slowly, watching the boy still curled under their blankets, hair tangled, face peaceful in sleep. It was moments like this, quiet and fleeting, that reminded him what they were still clinging to. Not just survival, but each other. The boy stirred and opened his eyes, blinking at the dimness. "Is it time?" he asked. The man nodded. "It's always time." They pushed on through the ash-covered countryside, keeping close to the side of the road where the trees gave them partial cover. The man's eyes scanned constantly tree lines, ditches, ruined houses in the distance, always calculating risk. The revolver stayed tucked in his waistband, a shadow under his coat. The boy walked beside the cart now more than he rode in it. He was older than when they began, not by years but by experience. The kind of growing up no child should have to do. Around noon, they came upon a ravine. A narrow metal bridge stretched across it, rusted and hunched like an old spine. The guardrails had collapsed in sections. The man approached it carefully, tapping the beams with a piece of rebar to test its strength. The river below was choked with debris, trees, tires, twisted metal. The boy stayed back, watching. "Is it safe?" he asked. The man didn't answer right away. He checked every plank of wood, every bolt still clinging to the frame. "Safe enough," he said finally. He took the cart first, inching it slowly across, the wheels groaning with each movement. Then the boy, step by step. The wind picked up halfway through, whistling through the broken rails. The boy froze. "It's okay," the man called. "Just look at me." The boy focused on his father's face and made it across. On the other side, they found a stretch of abandoned cars lining the road. Most had been stripped, tires gone, hoods open, interiors gutted. But one, a station wagon, still had its back door sealed. The man pried it open with the crowbar, and inside they found a child's car seat, a bag of moldy clothes, and beneath the floorboard, 2 cans of evaporated milk. He held them up to the boy with a rare smile. "A good find," he said. The boy grinned and nodded. They sat on the roadside to drink, the milk sweet and strange on their tongues after so much bland food. For a few minutes, they didn't speak, just sipped in silence, watching the clouds move slowly above, like old ships in a dying sea. Later, as they made camp in a shallow ditch off the road, the boy asked a question that caught the man off guard. What did the world look like before? The man leaned back against his pack, considering. "Green," he said finally. "Bright, loud, even. Birds in the trees, people walking around without fear. Music coming from stores, cars honking, dogs barking. Life." The boy tried to imagine it, eyes squinting as if straining to see through the fog of time. "It sounds like a dream," he said. The man didn't disagree. That night, sleep came fitfully. The man woke at one point to a sound in the distance, soft, irregular. He gripped the gun and waited, footsteps. Not animals. Human. Maybe 2 sets. He lay motionless, listening to them fade into silence again. Whoever they were moving away. He didn't wake the boy. Some truths were better kept in the dark. When the sunless morning returned, they moved quickly. The air was colder, the sky heavier, as though warning of snow. The man wrapped the boy tighter in the blankets and kept his hand close to the revolver. Hunger was starting to gnaw again. The food they'd found had lasted, but it was nearly gone. He rationed it down to the last spoonfuls, always giving the boy more than he took himself. The boy had begun to notice. "You need to eat too," he said once, frowning. The man just shook his head. "I'm okay." The boy didn't argue again, but the sadness lingered in his eyes. As they passed another burned-out town, they found a small church, mostly intact though its roof had caved in at the back. The cross still stood above the steeple, charred but upright. Inside, the pews had been pushed aside, and ash coated everything like snow. The boy wandered to the altar and sat on the edge of the raised platform. "Did people pray here?" he asked. "They did," the man said. "For what? For hope, for peace, for things to go back." The boy was quiet for a moment. "Do you think their prayers worked?" The man glanced around at the ruin. "Some did. Some maybe still are." The boy nodded solemnly, then stood. They didn't stay long. That afternoon, the boy began to cough, just once or twice at first, then more. The man paused their walking, kneeling beside him. "Your throat," the boy nodded. The man checked his temperature with the back of his hand. Warm, not feverish, not yet. But his chest tightened in a different way now, fear. He took out their dwindling supply of antibiotics and gave the boy a small dose, praying it would help. Medicine was rare. He couldn't afford to waste it, but the boy mattered more. They made camp under an overpass, where the wind whistled but the concrete offered some shelter. The man built a small fire from damp twigs and cardboard scraps. The boy huddled close, coughing occasionally into his sleeve. The man rubbed his back gently. "You're going to be okay," he said. The boy nodded but didn't answer. They sat in silence, the flames flickering low, casting ghostly shadows against the wall. As the fire began to die, the boy looked up. "What if we don't find anyone?" The man's heart ached at the question. "We will," he said. "There are good people out there. We just have to keep going." The boy leaned against him, eyes heavy with sleep. "As long as we have the fire," he mumbled. The man held him tighter. "That's right. As long as we have the fire." The wind picked up through the night, howling through the cracks in the concrete like a voice calling from far away. But they stayed huddled together, two figures wrapped in old blankets and a shared determination. The road would not break them. Not yet. The following days blurred into one long stretch of gray sky and barren landscape. Their progress had slowed. The man's eyes were heavy, his movements more labored. Each step felt like it cost him something, but he kept pushing forward, carrying the burden of survival on his shoulders. The boy, still fragile but somehow stronger than before, kept pace beside him. He walked with purpose, his small frame determined even as his body ached with the same weariness that had begun to settle in the man's bones. The cough that had started a few days ago hadn't improved, and the boy's strength was flagging. The man kept a watchful eye, but there was little he could do now. The medicine they had was running low, and the food was almost gone. They had learned to stretch every scrap, every moment of warmth, every ounce of energy to its limit. But it wasn't enough. Not anymore. The road they traveled was a wasteland of destruction, scorched earth, shattered buildings, and the skeletal remains of towns that once teemed with life. The man's mind wandered, thinking of the world that had been before. He had only faint, hazy memories now. He could recall the hum of a crowded street, the way a soft summer breeze had once felt on his face, but all of it seemed like it belonged to another person, another life. Now, the world was dead. It was reduced to ash and ruin, a place where hope had no place to grow. Yet, they moved forward because there was nothing else left to do. They came across another town, this one even more desolate than the last. No signs of life, no hint of shelter. The man stopped to check their bearings, his eyes scanning the horizon. The air felt different here, colder, more sterile. Something about the place made him uneasy. He had learned to trust his instincts. They had kept him and the boy alive for as long as they had. He didn't like the way the wind whispered through the streets, the way the empty windows stared back at him like hollow eyes. "We'll keep moving," the man said after a long pause, pulling the boy closer to him. The boy didn't ask any questions. He had learned that silence was often the safest response. They moved through the empty streets with only the sound of their footsteps to break the eerie quiet. The man's hand never strayed far from the revolver tucked beneath his coat, a silent promise of protection. He would never let anyone take his son, not while there was breath in his body. As they left the town behind, the landscape opened up into a barren plain. There was nothing for miles except the occasional burned-out tree or the faint shadow of something long abandoned. The road stretched out endlessly before them, like a ribbon of despair. The man's legs felt heavy, his joints stiff. He could feel the weight of everything pressing on him, the survival, the loss, the constant, gnawing fear that he would not make it, that the boy would not make it. The thought had crossed his mind countless times. But still, he moved. The boy was quieter now, his energy waning. He coughed more frequently, his small body trembling with the effort. The man could see it, the weight of the sickness, the weakness that had begun to settle in his son's bones. He hated the helplessness of it. There was nothing he could do, no doctor, no hospital, no hope of healing. They had no way of knowing if the boy's body would hold on for a little longer, or if it would break beneath the strain of the cold, the hunger, and the sickness. They made camp that night under the skeletal remains of a tree. The fire was small, just enough to stave off the biting cold. The boy lay on his side, his breathing shallow, his eyes barely open. The man sat by the fire, watching him closely. He knew that the boy's survival depended on keeping him warm, on keeping him fed, but there was little to give. The last can of beans had been eaten earlier in the day. The fire crackled softly, the only warmth in the world. "You're going to be okay," the man whispered, though the words felt hollow in his mouth. He didn't know if they were for the boy or for himself. The fire's glow danced in his eyes, casting shadows across his face. He couldn't bring himself to look away from his son, from the boy whose life had become so entwined with his own that he couldn't imagine existence without him. The boy stirred, his eyes fluttering open. "Are we close?" he asked, his voice hoarse and weak. The man hesitated before responding. "We're always close. We're almost there." The boy nodded, though his face betrayed his confusion. He didn't understand. He couldn't possibly understand how far they had come, how long they had been traveling. The man had tried to explain once, but the words seemed too foreign, too distant to mean anything to the boy. All the boy knew was that they had been walking for as long as he could remember, and they hadn't stopped. Not once, not for anything. They had never given up. The man had never allowed it. "Can you tell me a story?" the boy asked quietly, his voice barely above a whisper. The man thought for a moment, unsure of what to say. He had no stories left to tell. No fairy tales, no comforting myths. All that remained were the cold, hard truths of survival. But he could see the yearning in his son's eyes, the need for something beyond the bleak world they inhabited. So he searched his memory, looking for anything that might bring a sliver of comfort, something that might remind the boy of a time before. "Once, there were cities," he began slowly, his voice distant. "Tall, shining buildings, people everywhere. They lived in big houses, and there were cars that drove themselves. Some people had pets. Others traveled to distant places on airplanes. There were lights that never went out, and there were families, people like us." The boy's eyes widened, the quiet wonder of a child who had never known such things. What happened to them? The man swallowed hard, the lump in his throat growing thicker. They went away, they disappeared. Where did they go? The man closed his eyes, the answer coming unbidden. They forgot what mattered. The boy was silent, the firelight reflecting in his tired eyes. Do you think we'll be okay? The man looked at him, the weight of the world in his gaze. We will, as long as we have the fire. The boy smiled faintly, a small, fleeting curve of his lips. The man wrapped his arm around him, pulling him closer. They lay there together, the cold wind howling around them, but within their circle of warmth, there was just enough of a spark to keep them alive. The night stretched on, the cold becoming more biting as the hours passed, but within the warmth of their small fire, the man and the boy huddled together. It was their only defense against the frozen darkness that threatened to engulf them. The man's eyes were tired, and his body, once strong and full of purpose, now felt fragile, worn down by days of hardship. The boy was nearly asleep, his small body curled into his father's side. His breaths were shallow, more labored than before, but he was still there, still holding on, and that was all the man could ask for. The fire crackled, the embers casting a soft glow across their faces. The man reached down to adjust the blanket, making sure it was tucked tightly around the boy. His fingers trembled slightly as he did, betraying the weakness that had begun to settle in his own body. He was afraid to close his eyes, afraid that if he did, he might wake up and find that the boy was no longer there. That fear was constant, gnawing at him. But the boy was still there, and for now, that was enough. For a long time, they sat in silence, the only sounds the crackling of the fire and the occasional rustle of the wind. The man couldn't help but think back to their earlier days on the road, to the moments when they had found hope, when they had believed they might somehow make it through. Those moments now felt distant, like another lifetime. He had done everything he could. He had fought, he had protected, he had kept them both alive through sheer will and determination. But even he knew there was only so much one man could do against the weight of the world's devastation. The harsh reality of the world they inhabited was relentless, and survival was a fleeting thing. The boy stirred again, his small body shivering. The man pulled him closer, wrapping him tightly in the blanket. He couldn't help but wonder what the boy remembered of the world before the world of color, of life. Had he ever truly known it, or was it just something he had heard about in stories? The man wished he could give him more than just stories, more than just memories of a world that no longer existed. But he couldn't. All he could give was this small measure of warmth in a world that had grown unbearably cold. When the boy spoke again, his voice was barely a whisper. "Are we almost there?" The man looked down at him, his heart tightening in his chest. The boy was growing weaker. His face had lost its usual spark, and his eyes, once filled with wonder, were now dull with exhaustion. The man didn't know how much longer they could keep going, but he wasn't ready to face that truth, not yet. So he gave the boy the same answer he had always given: "We're close." The boy nodded faintly, as if the answer satisfied him. There was nothing else to say. They both knew the truth, though neither of them dared speak it aloud. The journey they had been on was coming to an end. The question was no longer whether they would survive, but whether they could make it just one more day. Every day felt like an eternity, and yet they kept moving forward. Because that was all they could do, move forward, even when there was no destination in sight. As the night wore on, the man sat still, his mind wandering between the present and the past. He thought of his wife, of the woman he had loved before the world had ended. He thought of her face, of the way she had looked at him when they had first met, the way her laughter had filled their small home with warmth. Those memories were so distant now, almost too painful to recall. He remembered the world they had lived in before the darkness descended, a world filled with life, with hope, with possibility. That world was gone now, reduced to ash and ruin. But he held on to the memories, clutching them like a lifeline, as if they were the last thread that connected him to the person he had been before. His thoughts were interrupted by a movement beside him. The boy was awake again, his eyes barely open, his face pale and drawn. The man's heart clenched at the sight, but he forced a smile, though it didn't reach his eyes. "Are you okay?" the man asked softly, his voice rough with emotion. The boy nodded weakly, though it was clear he was struggling. His breath came in shallow gasps, and his small body trembled with fever. The man reached out and touched his forehead, feeling the heat radiating from his skin. The boy had always been strong, but now the sickness was taking its toll. The man knew the end was near, but he refused to acknowledge it fully. He couldn't. He would do anything at all to keep the boy alive, to keep him by his side. "We're going to make it," the man whispered, even though he wasn't sure he believed it anymore. The boy didn't respond, but his eyes fluttered closed again, his small body relaxing into the warmth of his father's embrace. The fire flickered, its light casting long shadows over the ground, the only sound the soft crackling of the burning wood. For a moment, everything seemed peaceful, quiet, still, like they were safe in their small bubble of warmth. But the man knew it was only an illusion. The world outside was a harsh and unforgiving place. It always had been. But in this moment, the boy was there and they were together. And that, at least, was something. The man closed his eyes, feeling the weight of everything pressing down on him. The cold, the hunger, the relentless march of time. He felt the sickness creeping into his own body now, but he didn't care. As long as the boy was with him, as long as they were together, that was enough. He would keep going, keep moving forward, even if it was only for the boy's sake. And then, as the first light of dawn began to break through the clouds, something changed. The air felt lighter somehow, a subtle shift, almost imperceptible. The man looked down at his son, and for the first time in what felt like forever, he felt a sense of peace. The boy was still breathing, still holding on, and that was all that mattered. They had made it through another night, and tomorrow they would do the same. In that quiet, fragile moment, the man realized that there was no end to the road. No destination, no final rest. There was only the journey, the unyielding, relentless forward march that they would continue together as long as they could. The journey of the road is a relentless exploration of survival in a world that has lost its humanity. Cormac McCarthy's novel is more than just a tale of father and son struggling through a post-apocalyptic wasteland. It's an exploration of the human spirit, the fragility of hope, and the unbreakable bond between parent and child. Through the desolate landscapes and the harrowing conditions they face, McCarthy paints a haunting picture of a world where survival is a daily battle against the elements, against other people, and ultimately against despair itself. Yet, even in this bleak and unforgiving setting, the love between the man and the boy shines through as a flicker of light in the darkest of times. The man, though weary and broken by his circumstances, continues to press forward, driven by an overwhelming need to protect his son and give him a chance at life. He embodies the persistence of the human will, the desire to shield those we love from the horrors of the world, even when it seems like there is no hope left. His relationship with the boy serves as the novel's emotional core, a reminder that love is sometimes the only thing worth living for, even when everything else falls away. The boy, on the other hand, represents innocence in a world that has lost its sense of morality and compassion. His childlike wonder and the pure love he feels for his father are the only things that keep him going, even when faced with overwhelming odds. Though he is young, his survival instinct is as strong as his father's, and his presence is a constant reminder of the human capacity for resilience and compassion, even in the most dire circumstances. McCarthy's writing is sparse yet profound, using a minimalist style to allow the silence between the lines to carry as much weight as the words themselves. The lack of punctuation and the fragmented dialogue reflect the fractured world in which these characters live, mirroring the disintegration of civilization. Yet, in this silence, there is beauty, moments of grace and tenderness, fleeting but profound. It's a world where words matter less than actions, where survival is not guaranteed, but still fiercely pursued, not just for the sake of living, but for the sake of holding on to something, anything, that makes life worth living. As the story progresses, it becomes evident that the road they are traveling on is not just a physical journey, but a metaphorical one as well. It's a journey through the remnants of humanity, a reflection of the collapse of society, and a search for meaning in a world that seems devoid of it. Yet, even as the man and the boy move through this shattered world, they find moments of kindness and compassion, often in the most unlikely places. These small acts of humanity, offering help to strangers, sharing what little food they have, serve as a reminder that even in the midst of the worst imaginable circumstances, the human spirit is capable of great kindness. The conclusion of the novel, with its ambiguous ending, leaves us with the sense that while the world may have ended, life is still, in its own way, moving forward. There is no grand resolution, no final victory over the world's darkness, but instead, a quiet acceptance of the journey itself. The boy, in his innocence, represents a potential future, a possibility that despite everything, life will continue, perhaps in a new form. The road they travel may be long and fraught with peril, but it is also a road that holds the possibility of rebirth, of finding something worth living for, even in the most hopeless of times. In the end, the road is a meditation on love, loss, and the enduring human capacity for hope, even in the face of overwhelming despair. It challenges us to reflect on what it means to survive, not just physically, but emotionally and morally. In a world where everything else is stripped away, it's the love we share with those closest to us that can sustain us, even when there seems to be nothing left. It's a powerful reminder that even in the darkest times, the human spirit can find a way to endure, to protect, and to love. As the man and the boy move further down the road, we are left with the undeniable truth that the journey, however difficult, is what gives life its meaning. The road may never end, but as long as there is love, there is still something worth walking toward. And in that love, there is hope.